Don't chase clicks or views or metrics that are not things that you're interested in or passionate about. Look for people who are interested and passionate about the subjects that you're covering. Lean into the things you like, because that enthusiasm will come out, whether it's video or you're writing or whatever. The other thing is being true to yourself and not following the herd necessarily, but have a good sense of who you're writing for.
Explore the minds and marketing strategies behind today's winning brands and businesses. Tap into the power of the creator economy with Earned by CreatorIQ. Here's Conor Begley.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Earned. Today we've got Jim Louderback on the show. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Jim has just an unbelievable background, as well as now has probably one of the largest publications in the world dedicated to the creator economy with Inside the Creator Economy, which is like newsletter, multimedia. You've got a whole events thing globally that's going on. You know, it's really, really cool to see.
Yeah, thanks. And it's just so much fun to be actually not working full-time for anybody anymore, which I've done all of my career.
Totally. Let's go back through your career, right? So if you were to go all the way back, right, you were the editorial director at PCMag, as well as Associated Publications. You were the CEO and GM at VidCon, which you then sold to Viacom, editorial director at Tech TV. You're the CEO of Revision 3, which you sold to Discovery. Talk people through your career, just what it is for those that don't know you.
It's sort of this random walk through the world of media and technology. When I got out of school, got an MBA, did management consulting for 6 or 7 years, basically building computer systems on PCs and mainframe computers, being connected together back when that was a thing, which was a while ago. And fell into media because I started writing about what I was doing in the tech space. Love these tech magazines, PC Magazine, PC Week, etc. That kind of led to media and, working at magazines, helping to launch some of the early internet websites on ZDNet, and then a cable network about technology, which led into building, once the internet started disrupting television, building video things as well. And it's a lot, but it's basically like, if it's fun, I'll do it. If it's not fun anymore, I stop doing it.
Is that why you stopped working for other people? It just wasn't fun anymore?
Well, I got to the point in my life where I didn't have to. It's fun and it's not fun, but I sold a company, Discovery. I left Discovery when it wasn't fun anymore. Did the same with Viacom, which became Viacom CBS, then Paramount, then it wasn't fun anymore. So yeah.
Is it isolating? Because, you've got this newsletter business now, and you've got, 40,000 subscribers on your LinkedIn, another 30,000 plus on your newsletter. So you've got this little independent media empire you're building. Is it tough not having kind of the team and the organization like you're used to?
No, not at all. And I've always been a little bit of a stray outdoor cat anyway. So I run around and I do a lot of events if I need to, talk to people all the time. So I feel like I'm surrounded by smarter people than me everywhere around the world. So I don't miss it at all. It's fun doing it. And it's a stage of my life where I'm like, I'm just going to do this. And in many ways, a lot of what I do is just, making money to fund my travel habits. So
where are your preferred travel destinations?
I love Europe and I want to explore more of it. But if you said I could only go to one place again in the world, I would go back to Tasmania.
Wow, that's cool. Why Tasmania?
Because, the Australians are great, right? But Tasmania has great climate, great food. It's super beautiful and clean. It's like next stop from Hobart is Antarctica. It has amazing wine. It has amazing hiking, like some of the best hikes I've ever done there. It has wicked, strange animals that you can run across. There's an animal that poops cubes. It's the only one, and it lives there.
So what's funny is I lived in Australia for about 7 months, but never went to Tasmania. I kind of always missed out on it. Well, let's talk about, so when you were at VidCon, you were CEO. And I think one of the things I find most fascinating about your background is it's not like super common to see somebody go from the kind of editorial side to the kind of management or CEO side, right? Which you ended up doing in the kind of second half of that run that you had. Why do you think you were able to make that transition? And then separately, you're very successful as a CEO, right? Multiple exits, grew the companies a lot. What is your philosophy as a leader that you think helped make you as successful as you were?
Well, look, I think first, as far as doing it, as I said at the top, I went to college, I got an MBA. I always wanted to build businesses. And, I took an entrepreneurship. I was at NYU at the Stern School and took an entrepreneurship course. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. This is before the dot-com boom and everything else like that. So it was always sort of in the back of my mind that I would do that. And when I got out of grad school, I said, I should do consulting and play with a lot of different companies and big and small and different industries and see what I liked. And then, of course, I fell into media. So through the time of building up media chops, turns out I like writing. I like doing TV. I like doing radio and things like that. I always had in the back of my mind that someday I think I'd like to bring those entrepreneurial chops together. So after Tech TV, when I went back to Ziff Davis to be editor-in-chief at PC Magazine, some of the people that I had worked with at Tech TV ended up starting a couple companies in the media space, disrupting media. One of them was Dig, which you probably know Dig, late lamented, but they also were playing around with doing television on the internet, which was Revision 3, and there wasn't really much there, but when they raised money for Dig, they also raised money for Revision 3, and they're like, we're not going to get the money unless we get a CEO. You want to come be our CEO and really take this thing and do it? And I was like, yeah, magazines are dead. Sure. So I did. I mean, I basically, cut my salary in half and got a big part of the company and said, let's go build this thing. So maybe it's stupidity, but I was like, that sounds like more fun than what I'm doing now. So I'm going to go do that. And just philosophy in building companies. And I learned this, right? So I was first-time CEO, made a lot of mistakes like everybody does. I learned that you really need to have a strong strategic plan. You have to have a good vision of where your company's going in 20 or 30 years before you can even think about what you're doing this year. You need to treat the high-level people that you bring in as basically owners and CEOs of their own divisions, but you got to pull that exec team together and say, we're all in it together. Forget about everybody else. We are the group that's going to make this happen. And empowering people that way, being strategic, and leaning into things that everyone liked and hiring great people. That's all those things I think go into building successful companies. And then right time, right place. I mean, I think Revision 3, we were too early. I mean, we had a nice exit and everybody did okay. But you look at some of the companies that came in a couple of years later and they had bigger exits. Of course, all the MCNs fell apart after that. But, it's just right time, right place. It's definitely about having that enthusiasm and getting everyone excited, focusing on something, and then having a plan.
It's funny you say right time, right place. I would say that timing was probably one of the hardest parts about the last 20 years of media. Like, it's gone through rise and fall, death and destruction of multiple business. It's like magazines and then dead, and then TV and then dead, and then it was the MCNs and then those fell off, and now it's creators. You had to ride multiple waves to kind of get where you're at.
Yeah, and look, at Revision 3, which was, it was basically video over the internet, 2006, 2007, we got started. Our tagline early on was kill your TV. And that was 2007 and it's 2024 and the TV is just about dying now, except YouTube is now TV. But you know what I mean? We were like, kill your linear TV and just come over here to the dark side where we've got cookies. And, finally it's happening. I thought it would happen a long time before.
Yeah. So on the editorial side, I have learned a lot publishing myself over the last year and a half. And I think it's made me really reflect on what makes good content, right? And obviously you've done this several times now. I have to imagine you have certain things that you repeat either in your head or to other people when it comes to trying to create stuff that people want to read, that they want to watch. What kind of wisdom can you impart for us there? What are the things you think about when creating?
It's a couple different things. Don't chase clicks or views or metrics that are not things that you're interested in or passionate about. Look for people who are interested and passionate about the subjects that you're covering. Lean into the things you like, because that enthusiasm will come out, whether it's video or you're writing or whatever. The other thing is being true to yourself and not following the herd necessarily, but have a good sense of who you're writing for. So, I didn't really start working on personas until a little bit later, once I started running magazines, things like that. But let's imagine, who is that person we're writing for? Have a couple of different people and personas that you think make sense. And then whether you're doing video, whether you're writing, or whatever your medium is, imagine that you're having a conversation with that person, that they're your best friend, they're someone you want to talk to, they're your younger brother, whatever it is, and make sure that you are having a real exchange directly with that person. And one of the things that I started leaning into with ChatGPT and DALL-E and Midjourney before that was you can actually use these things to actually create images of your personas that you come up with, which really helps bring it and make it even more tangible and more real to life.
I love that. What I find is some of the best content I've created is like taking a conversation I'm actually having with somebody and then just turning that into the material, right? I mean, like if they are interested enough, if multiple people want to have this conversation with me or on a repeated basis over time, clearly there's something there. But yeah, I love that. It makes a ton of sense.
Ideas are everywhere, but look for inspiration everywhere. I mean, I love the fact that you get that inspiration from, look, I've had the same conversation 3 times in the last 2 weeks. I'm going to write about this one. You know, you do a really good job with that when you lean into what the beauty brands are doing and what's happening. And I have no idea what happened to your stock index fund, but that was just such a good idea and it hadn't been done before. And you explained it really well. And I felt like you were talking to me going like, did you ever think about this? Well, you should. Like, you can be really dispassionate and write for The Economist or write for the New York Times, but you can also have stuff that's really personal. It depends on who you are and what you want to do, but always think about that audience and who that is and serve them because they're the most important person, not your sponsors, not anybody else.
Yeah. And I think on that idea of writing about the things that you're passionate about generally, I remember there's somebody I know who's kind of in this space and they got really big on TikTok. And it was because they created a video about the Kardashians and, you know, something related to their business or whatever. And so then they became known as like the Kardashian creator. And like, I don't even like the Kardashians. Like, I don't want to write about them. And so if you write about things you're not interested in and then you have success, it's almost worse because then you're stuck writing about stuff you don't even like, right?
Well, I think the same thing comes with companies. I mean, at one point, I forget where I was running Revision 3 or something. I can't remember, but, you know, I started to be like, no, do I really want to keep doing this? This is great. But, you know, and somebody came to me with this really interesting idea. And I was like, wow, that's wild. I could do that. I remember going to a really good friend and he said, okay, do you just like the idea of doing something different? Or do you really like this idea? And the idea was like disrupting used clothing stores or something. And I was like, you know, in the end, do I want to spend the next 5 years of my life trying to sell junk? No. You got to be passionate about it every day when you wake up, not just when the, you know, when the little like dopamine clicks in because you get 1 billion views.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, that passion comes through as well, right? Like in your ability to like get other people excited about it, to want to join the mission, whether it's content, recruiting, or just general, I think it just makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Well, and you have to do that because as a leader, whether you're a leader and you're communicating with people or a leader or running the company, you've got to get people to follow you and people to get excited about it. And yes, in a startup, there's the brass ring of options and we could be the next Facebook or the next whatever, but you really want people to have a purpose and excitement, but you also want them to feel like they're part of something and you want to feel like you're having a little bit of fun with it too, because if it's just dry and boring, people are going to go.
Yeah, totally. So we've built up our own little events arm, which is not getting a little bit bigger. Like we're going to do one in October. It'll have over 1,000 people, which is pretty cool, about 50% bigger than last year. But you've built at a totally different scale than us. You started with VidCon, which you built up, which you then said became Viacom, which became Paramount. But you know, you were running events that were 100,000 people collectively. What do you think is key to building out really good events, really high quality ones that people want to attend? I feel like that's one of your secret powers.
Well, first of all, I'm looking forward to going to your event in October in LA for the first time. So super excited to see what you guys are building.
You can't steal all of our ideas, though.
We all borrow from each other, believe me. And actually, most of what I'm doing at events now is curating content. So I'm curating industry content. I really like putting the sessions and the people together in unexpected ways. And I think that's one thing to think about on events is you don't just want to do the same old things and the same things people expect. I mean, this thing that, you know, at a recent event, I took a couple of my peers from building magazines in the 90s and 2000s, and I put them on stage with one of the hottest, newest tech YouTubers, Jacqueline Dallas. And I was like, Jacqueline, I want you to interview these people and be the host and moderator. But I just love the idea of having the old guard of computer reviewers from the 90s sitting with the brand new guard of who's going to be the computer reviewer of, you know, tomorrow and today. So that unexpectedness, I think, is good. The conversations where they're never going to happen unless you put it together. And if they do, everyone wants to be a fly on the wall. But the one thing I will say about events I think is really important is you need to think about them as not just the thing that happens inside the walls of the convention center or the room. An event starts when somebody hears about it before they even buy a ticket, and it ends long after they leave. And you have to think of each of those processes and the experience, the emotional design, and the informational design through it. So like from the time I buy a ticket to when I get in my car or get on a plane or whatever I do to get there, what are the things that are going to keep me getting more and more excited? And then the journey to the event. What are you doing to help people on the journey? And then when they land, or when they walk into the hotel, or when they walk into the convention center or the room for the first time, what are the things that are going to reinforce all of that and make them so excited that they've made the trip, made the journey, that they've arrived? At the event itself, we think a lot about that, but that whole lead up to it and the trip there, and then seeing it for the first time and the impact that makes you, and then what you do there. And then when it's over, how do you reinforce what happened, and how do you build on that and keep that community going in some way so that when you do it again, people can't wait to buy another ticket?
I love it. I mean, what you're really talking about is like user journey mapping, right? Like that's the way that we would talk about it, is like map out every step of this journey. And then how do you make it optimal? How do you make it the best it possibly can be? And I think that, to your point, people probably skip a lot of steps in that process, right?
Well, yeah. And you get so focused on what happens from the minute the doors open till the minute the doors close, which you should, to be clear. But all those other elements tie into what separates a good event from something that you just can't wait to tell other people about and go back to.
What are the best pre and post event, either follow-ups or lead-ups to the event that you've been like, this is really cool? Like I make sure I do this every time.
On a pre-event thing, what can you give to somebody before they leave that makes them excited to go, excited to get there? Depending on the cost of your event, you can't necessarily send something to every attendee, but how do you give them some good information, or maybe send them a little, if you know everyone's traveling from around the world, can you send them a little kit? You know, maybe it's like earplugs and an eye mask, you know, something to freshen them up, to say, you're all traveling all over the world to come here. Let's make sure you get there feeling fresh, or something like that. Or maybe it's a digital good that you give to people and say, I just wanted to give this to you as, you know, the beginning of your journey to the event before you leave. And then afterwards, you know, we all try to build these communities, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think being able to let people connect at an event with people that they meet, and then just fostering that through WhatsApp or other ways, and making sure that that keeps going, is always a good thing. Look, when an event ends, all we want to do is go to the beach and sleep for a week. Let's face it. But is there a way to immediately, when people leave the next day, is there an email, or is there a, you know, something in the mail that shows up that has some cool mementos of it, or that connects you with communities? I mean, getting something in the mail delivered to you that is a memento of what happened, you're like, oh yeah, that was great. Or even in the lead up.
I love the idea of, let's say everybody that is flying in, like we're going to send them a special kit, or anybody that's coming from like out of town, we'll treat them a little bit differently. And we're at a small enough number, at even 1,000, where we could probably figure that out pretty quickly, right?
Look, I'll tell you one thing about your event. Okay. So it's in a weird place. I mean, it's out Wilshire or something. It's like some cool place, but it doesn't look like there are any hotels around it. So I don't know if you have specific hotels that you're telling people to stay at, but you know, what happens when people walk into the hotel, for example, when they walk in, is there a big sign that says welcome? Or, you know, I've even seen this is cool. If you know you're coming to the event, you don't have to put something expensive in everyone's room. Maybe you just give them a special key, but you give them a key that just has the event written on it, or something cool, or I don't know, but all those things can tie in for people. And, you know, is it at the airport? Is it when they get on the plane? Probably not. But is it at the hotel when they arrive? Arrival is such a key moment to reset expectations and boost enthusiasm.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm curious, you know, transitioning into what you're doing now, you know, you're now really focused both as your own independent media entity, but also very focused on the creator economy. I'm curious, what made you decide that that was like, this is what I'm going to do for the next 5 years. This is my thing, or 10 years, whatever it is.
Well, I've kind of been doing this since 1993 in many ways, as I look back on it. So started working at PC Week, it's 92. I got a column. I mean, I was in my 20s, right? And I always thought, I was like, oh, maybe I'll have a column in a computer magazine when I'm 40. And they gave me one. I had a weekly column, and it was amazing. And I was like, oh my God, I am so lucky that I answered this ad and they gave me the job, and I'm here, and I'm, I get to talk to Bill Gates and I get to talk to Michael Dell and all these amazing people and I get to write about it. Cool. And then in 1993 or 94, I went to the second WC3 conference, which was the internet conference where all the early pioneers of the browser came together. So Mark Andreessen was there and a bunch of other people all building this stuff. The blogs had just come out. And the first blogs were in 94. And I looked at this and I was like, wow, the gatekeepers gave me this column and now I'm doing it. And it's so special. Anybody on a blog can just be a tech expert and reach everybody. And, the kind of two ways you can go when that sort of disruptive thing happens in your career. You can either say, well, I'm going to do everything that's like never going to happen. I'll just do everything I can to keep it from happening. And because I got mine, or you can embrace it and say, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing in the world. And everybody should have an opportunity to do what I'm doing. And I chose the second path. I've seen that as I went through, traditional magazines, television. I was the first one. I worked with a team at Tech TV. We were the first ones to give tiny little internet video cameras to people in like 1998 and 99. We called it the ZDTV Netcam Network, where we put real people on television. You could do your own video through things like the TriCast and other things where you could do TV yourself through the internet and not have to worry about a big studio and 25 people and floor directors and camera operators and everything. Do it all in your house. Every step of that along the way, I embraced that as a way for people to do media by themselves. And then YouTube came out and other networks came out. Anybody else anywhere around the world could wake up, no friends, followers, fans, subscribers, and start it themselves and build it themselves. And so there was something about that through line from WC3 in 94 to anybody can, anywhere in the world can build an audience and have a life and talk and communicate and build media and communities. It's just something I've been passionate about forever. And so now I get the opportunity to think about it all the time and write about it, not worry about building a business. I'm just able to do it, embrace it, and hopefully I'll just push it forward a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the coolest validations most recently was you going to the White House along with a bunch of other people. That's pretty cool. Tell people about that. What was the plan? How did it work? I mean, I thought one of the more interesting, probably the most interesting aspect for me was how they treated you and journalists very differently, right? Like if you were a journalist, it's like, I don't know, we're not sure about you, but creators, you're in. Tell me about that experience.
Well, it was an amazing experience. They announced at VidCon in June that they were going to do this White House Creator Conference and that anybody could apply, which I thought was really nice. There's a bunch of people that actually I met at VidCon in Baltimore the year before and the digital team at the White House. And I love that they were doing it. And the interesting thing is that they have realized, and we're seeing this around the world, that creators who reach directly out to communities and people that they talk to are more trusted and in some ways more valued than traditional media, depending on how old you are and type of media that you consume. And I think they've realized that that is as important to curry favor and work with and explain and motivate as somebody from NBC or CNN or Fox News or whatever. So just the fact that they did it and brought us there and talked to us. I mean, there was a lot of people who were very generous with their time from President Biden on down. I mean, it was heartwarming is that they've discovered that creators are as important a media outlet, very diffuse and all over the place and lots of stray cats roaming around, but just as important as the mainstream media. That was my biggest takeaway. And there are a lot of other stuff that happened. I wrote about it in my newsletter, but that to me was the biggest deal.
And how do people subscribe to your newsletter if they want to?
LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, Jim Louderback, just follow me and you can subscribe to my newsletter there. It's free. If you want to, you can go to Beehive and do it as well. Follow me there. Or my blog, which is still there from the 90s. After going to the WC3 at louderback.com, you can go there and get my RSS feed and get it delivered via your RSS reader if you still have one.
So I know that you've been using DALL-E and some of these other AI tools for like image generation and whatever. But obviously, I think that it's potentially the next wave of a disruption that occurs within the media industry, whether it's longer form content, shorter form content, video content, etc. How do you expect that to interact with the world of creators over the next decade?
Well, I think what we see with a lot of these tools is that they're not replacing like all the human creativity and ability to tell stories and everything out there, but they're enabling and fits and starts in different ways for you to do a better job or a more quicker job or get to the heart of storytelling more quickly. So I ran magazines back in the newsstand days, right? I used to sweat over the cover images and the cover lines, because when you walked up to that newsstand at, on the corner or in the airport and you saw my PC magazine with a great image and a great cover line, you'd be like, oh my God, I got to buy that. So when I first started my newsletter on LinkedIn, I didn't put any art in. I have no artistic ability. I can't draw. I didn't have money to hire a designer or anybody else. I mean, I'm just putting the text out there. Then once Midjourney started coming out and DALL-E, I was like, ooh, I could have some fun with this. And so I started thinking about the image that goes along with my newsletter that I put on LinkedIn as my magazine cover. And so I started coming up with fun images to go along with it. And I always knew about the headlines. Like I always do a fun headline, but that's something that added to the experience of my newsletter that I would not have done. It didn't take anybody's jobs away because I wasn't paying anybody to do this. And so when I think about AI over the next 4 or 5 years, I think it lets creators do what they do better. It'll turn a good creator into a great creator into superpower. But what I also think it will do, which is scary to creators, but also ties into my whole vision of anybody should be a creator if they can, is it will let people around the world who maybe don't know how to video edit or have something to say and really aren't sure how to say it, to help them do it more. So it will enable for me a whole new group and class of people to become good creators in whatever media they want. And also with the ability to do translation that is both voice translation, take my voice and change it into like, I know, yo entiendo, which means that somebody in Indonesia or in India or in Zimbabwe can speak in their native language and make videos and reach not just the people that speak their language. I mean, look, they're only 16 or 17% of the world speak English. But through this, over the next 5 years, you'll be able to reach everybody with an internet connection in their language. And if your content is universal, you can really expand your audience. I mean, look at Cabby Lame, what he's done on TikTok without speaking, or even Mr. Bean before that, right? Universal. Well, we're going to get to universal with language. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I think with every innovation that's occurred, I mean, you think about things like YouTube, right? Just the ability to like upload a video of yourself costlessly and anybody can consume it. It's had that effect that you're talking about, where it enables like a new group of people, a new generation of people that maybe didn't have access to capital to like spend to spin up their own TV network, right? Now they can have their own. I think it's the next version of that. Again, it'll be curious to see where it goes, say 10 years from now or 15 years from now. I think that one's a little more unpredictable for me. But yeah, I agree. I think in the short term, it's just going to enable more people to do it. And it's going to enable people like you or me to do it more effectively, more efficiently, better. I think it's going to be a good thing.
Yeah, here's a great example of the rise of VTubers, which some people think is a little creepy, but if you spend more time in Asia, you realize it's everywhere. But there are a lot of people that don't want to put their face in front of the camera for whatever reason. And there are people who do headless channels. But with AI and with advances in technology, you can create these 3D avatars that are yourself and turn yourself into, an idealized version of yourself or a superhero or a frog or whatever you want and communicate that way. And that's just one example of how technology will allow more creators who may not be comfortable with the current method of doing it to get into this world and create and build an audience and grow their life that way.
Yeah. Well, let's do one kind of fun end of show question. So obviously travel is a big personal area of interest. If you had to create a publication with no intended economic outcomes, like you're not trying to make any money off of it, just personal interest, something you want to write about, is there something else you'd write about than what you do today?
I really love doing technology reviews in the past, but so I love doing that and geeking out on it. But I do think there is a travel magazine experience, website, video, whatever, about helping people who may be in their 50s or 60s think about, how do I travel like I did in the 20s? Okay, now I'm not going to like put a huge 40-pound backpack on my back and go to, Kathmandu or something. But what are the things you can do? And how can you still see the world? And how can you still have that kind of freewheeling travel experience, even though, your knees might be a little creaky or you really just don't want to take an overnight train surrounded by like 50 other people. Maybe there's a slightly better way to do it. So I just think that is a fascinating idea. And I think it'd be a lot of fun. And who knows, maybe I'll go conquer that next time.
Well, I really appreciate you taking out the time, Jim. Your energy is obvious, and I can see why people are attracted to it. And congrats on the success. Would encourage everybody to subscribe to the newsletter, and excited to see you in October.
Thanks for having me on. And Inside the Creator Economy on LinkedIn, would love to have you be there. And it's free, so why not?
Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe. Earned by CreatorIQ. CreatorIQ is your all-in-one solution to grow, manage, scale, and measure your influencer marketing program. Ready to unlock the power of the creator economy? Get started with a demo today at CreatorIQ.com.